pattern we're going to tie today is the Duracell. It's a great pattern. I'm going to start out with a jig hook. This is kind of a jig fly. And I've just got a copper bead on the front. Most commonly I've seen it tied with a silver bead, but because it's kind of named after the battery, I figured I'd give it the copper top and put a copper bead on the front. I'm just laying down a nice thread base of black thread. I'll go ahead and remove the excess, and then I'm going to go ahead and continue on down to the bend of the hook. That's going to do us right about there. I'll move my thread forward a little bit. For the tail, I'm just going to use some Coq de Leon. It's kind of a amber color. I pulled off about 8 or 9 fibers here, and we're going to measure this so it's about the length of the shank of the hook. Take that as my measurement, move that towards the back end of the hook. Get a wrap on that. Check the length, that's looking good. I want to keep that centered on the top of the hook, and we're just going to go ahead and secure that down back at the bend of the hook. With that in place, I'll just come on in with my scissors and we'll cut off the balance. For ribbing, I'm just going to use some brassie size red wire. I kind of stick that a little bit into the bead. I'm going to secure this down on the lens side of the hook. I'm going to just take that right down to where our tails begin. And I'll move that forward a wrap. For dubbing, I'm going to use some chocolate brown Diamond Brite. It's kind of that brown color, but it's got nice flecks of color in it. Just dub that right onto our thread. Sometimes these dubbings can be a little bit challenging just because it's so stringy. But for the little pieces that we will end up having sticking out, we'll just trim them down a little bit. I'm just going to move my thread back down to the tail, get one firm wrap right around that tail, and I'm going to tighten this as I go. We're going to create just a little bit of a taper. So I'll take some over wraps just to help us out with that taper as we move up. That's going to be enough. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of shear some of that dubbing off. Take a wrap over the top of it just to make sure that's kind of locked in place, and I'll turn my vise a little bit, grab my scissors, and we'll cut off the excess. And this is where I'll come in and trim some of that out. So I'll just use the rotary feature on my vise, find some of those stringy pieces, and then just continue turning my vise and clipping out those pieces that are sticking out, just so I can get a little bit tighter body on this. I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to wrap back a little bit because I want to leave some room for a nice CDC collar. I'm going to take my red wire. We're just going to take some open spiral wraps to create some ribbing here on this pattern. And once I get it up here, I'm going to go ahead and take a wrap over the top of it, pull it backwards, and take a wrap or two behind it. This is a little bit thicker wire, so we're going to helicopter it off, and it's going to take a second probably. So I've got two CDC feathers. These are olive brown. Got them in my material clip. I'm going to go ahead and clip that off pretty close to the stem. That's going to leave me my CDC, so it's ready to go. We're going to create a little dubbing loop here. So just take that loop over the top, take a couple of wraps around the base of it, pull it up tight, and I'm just going to take a few wraps back to where I want this dubbing collar to begin. Now I can take my CDC that's in my material clip, I'm going to put it through that material clip, and then just barely pull it out, and then pull that loop tight and let go with my material clip. With those in place, pulled tight, I can go ahead and spin this up. That ought to do us just fine. I'll take a wrap or two because I've got some extra thread until I get to where that CDC is. I'm going to want to try to stroke this back. Some of it's going to go crazy on us, and that's okay. We'll fix it as we move forward. And if it falls off your dubbing twister like mine just did, just take it with your hand or with a pair of hackle pliers. And then with each turn, I'm just pulling everything a little bit backwards. And once I get to about there, I'll go ahead and take a wrap over that dubbing loop thread, just locking it in place. Pull that thread a little bit backwards. And I'm just going to come in with my scissors and cut that thread off. With that done, I'm going to stroke all of this back. I'm going to start taking some wraps back on it to help keep that laying backwards. Now we're going to go back to that same Diamond Brite chocolate brown dubbing. Dub a little bit more on. We're going to put a little bit of this in front of that CDC collar. So I'm going to stroke it all back again. Get that nice and wrapped in. That's going to help fill in behind the bead and help hold some of those fibers back. We'll grab our whip finisher at this point. And grab our thread cutter. And that is the Duracell, tied with a copper bead instead of a silver bead. Great pattern. This thing fishes really well. That bead's going to get it down in the water, and you're gonna kill them with this. So grab yourself a hook, throw it in your vise, and give this one a shot.